Hey guys, what's up? I hope you're having a good day. I'm tired. I've been on the road nonstop. I did it to myself. I've been in 6 different states, traveling across the Midwest part of the United States. Are we united anymore? I'm not even sure. But it's been a lot of miles traveled. So I'm a little bit weary as we tape on this Monday morning. Today I'm going to talk to you about a specific way we need to be looking at the media. And I'll get into that in a moment because the media is influencing us in a major way, and this is something that's been heavy on my heart. And I want to give you a biblical perspective of so those of you who don't like that kind of thing, you can just go ahead and tune out right now. I want to give you a biblical perspective on how you should see and treat the media. All right, we're going to talk about that in a minute. Before we get into that, first of all, do you like my shirt? I'm a 51-year-old man, and I still wear humor T-shirts. I make these shirts. I sell them. Got no time for jackasses, unapologetic patriot. As you know, that's on our website, prathertees.com. Got no time for jackasses. The days are short, listen, and the times are lean, and things are about to get rough. So do not put up with silly, foolish people. Don't do it. I mean, there's no irony in the fact that I created this shirt. And the donkey is the symbol of the Democratic Party. Got no time for jackasses, man. Got no time for jackasses. You can pick one up while they last, because we will not reprint them like this. If at all, we won't reprint them. Go to prathertees.com. Check it out. You can use Chad15, get 15% off. There is my little promo. I have been having a good time lately. We had some great shows recently. Got a lot more coming. Go to watchchad.com. That's where all the fun stuff is. And thank you. I've been going back through and reading some of the reviews of the show. And you guys are doing a fantastic job of sharing your heart with me. I know that I have gotten some really good feedback on some of the recent episodes that I did that were a little more biblical based. I like it because sometimes people sort of get a little bit pissed off. Currently in our category, we have dropped down to, at the moment of this reading, we were at 87 yesterday, we're at 98 today. Every time you leave a rating and review, it helps boost it. When you share, people listen, all of those kind of things, obviously it's going to boost us in the ratings. Hey, we're ranked 201 in South Korea, Shy. That's not bad for a podcast in South Korea. Apparently some of our military folks over there are listening to my voice. God bless you. Thank you for putting on that uniform every day. And but yeah, some of the stuff, this says getting Chad on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. I really enjoyed this conversation. Was cut with a double-edged sword, 5 stars. That's from Child of God. Steve, the band, of course, you agreed, Chad and the 1099 Dependents. That's maybe might be the new band name, especially after spending the last 5 days with Steve Helms driving at 103 miles an hour down the interstate trying to get us to the next show. Wow. This says, thanks, Chad. Because of you and my mother and father and ex-mother-in-law, I have started listening to the Bible and trying to become a better person, and I do believe it is helping, but I still have far to go. Keep preaching, brother. We all do. We all do. We all got a long way to go. I'll just say it ain't about a performance track. Get off the treadmill and let God work in you. That's what he's doing in me. He's had both hands on both shoulders in recent weeks, and he's saying some powerful things. My friend Matt Kim, if you have watched, follow Matt Attack or follow his podcast, Matt Kim has blown up really big recently. He texted me just this morning because he's flying in next week. We're going to meet in Dallas, and we're going to do an episode of the show together. And Matt messaged me. Actually, let me just read the message to you. I was lower, I was feeling kind of low, feeling sorry for myself this morning. I was tired and just stuff going on in my own life. I lost 3 friends yesterday. One very dear close friend of mine who used to travel with me on the road for about a year, passed away in a car accident yesterday. Two other very fine friends of mine. So 3 in one day. So I was just kind of feeling low this morning. And Matt Kim texted me, and he said, I'm listening to your most recent episode now. We're supposed to meet and be together. It's a part of the plan. There is no coincidence. Can't wait. I said, I love it, brother. I can't wait. I felt that we needed to connect for a couple of months. And he said, several parallel storylines about to hit a convergence moment. This is exciting stuff. So be ready. I don't know what's going to happen on that. He and I are getting together. We've communicated for a long time, but we've never met. So I'm excited to hang out with him and have a conversation and see what gets put together on a deal like that. So it's good stuff, Shy. I don't know where you've been. I don't know what you've been doing all week long, but man, it's been wild around here, dude. So there's some good stuff happening. But here's kind of where I'm at. And like I said, I alluded to earlier, I know that I'm kind of occasionally messing with some people a little bit. I post these little clips on social media, and people are mad. People are angry. By and large, I get the big amen or, keep on doing this, whatever. But I have a lot of people who are angry. They really feel this need to fight against the idea that God wants to be active in their life. That's a natural inclination because you don't want anyone or anything to make any demands on you. There is a certain level of accountability out there that you and I are all supposed to be under. All of us come under some kind of authority. It's not a good feeling. We want to be this autonomous, independent being that goes out there and makes our own rules and does whatever we want to do. We can live as reckless as we want, and there's no consequences. I had a guy who said to me on social media, on Instagram specifically, you need to follow me over there. That's an interesting place. But on Instagram at Watch Chad, he commented under one of my posts from this show, and he said, God loves everybody equally, regardless of what they've ever done, and they will be loved, in the everlasting, basically with no consequences for anything that they've done or any way that they've lived. You guys are making up this fear-mongering religion that adds these requirements on people. And my response to that is, if you're creating a God that has no justice, then you've in essence created a God that also has no love. Because you can't have a loving God if you don't have a God that's just. You can't have those. You can't have one without the other. You can't have love without justice. You can't have justice without love. Those things play hand in hand. So to tell me that you don't believe that God was going to have any consequences for your life, well, I have some issues with that because let's assume you say, because this guy was talking from the idea that he believed in God, and he was dancing real close to the truth in some of his responses. But here's what I got to say to that. Let's assume that this guy believed that we're made in God's image. Okay, that's a biblical concept. Well, if you're made in God's image, or even if you're not, you don't allow people to treat you without consequence. You don't allow people into your home without vetting them. You don't let them into your life. They don't have influence over your family or community or your stuff. You don't just toss your keys to a guy in the parking lot and say, "Here, go drive my truck while I'm in here shopping. Have at it. Drive it as fast as you want and burn the tires. Do whatever you want to do." You don't do that. There's a vetting process to the people you allow into your life. And if people wrong you or transgress against you or sin against you, or anything, there's a consequence. If a person breaks your heart, you tend to marginalize and put that person at a distance. If a person steals your stuff, you don't let them back around your stuff. There's consequences to that. So I don't know why you would assume that God would be any different. Now, I'm not telling you that God's going to accept or reject a person based on the merits of their life. It's 100% what they do with the person of Jesus and his sacrifice. That's the requirement. But my question there is to say that when one day you stand before God, there's no consequences. That's simply wrong. That's simply wrong. There are consequences. Galatians chapter 6, the Apostle Paul says to the church in Galatia, he said, do not be deceived. God is not mocked. What you sow, you will also reap. There will be consequences to the things that you plant in this life. So here's what I want us to do today. Because I get into this stuff and I start thinking, all right, how can I take the current events that's happening in our world and give you somewhat of a biblical worldview? Not that you don't already have it, but how can I arm you with a biblical worldview and a way to defend it? Because I see you guys toiling and travailing out there on social media, fighting over what the news media has said, what you've seen on the networks. And at the end of the day, I feel like all of us, myself included, are sometimes missing the mark in the way we're going at it, okay? Because we're trying to argue with facts and logic I want you to learn to argue from your worldview. Okay, just like I told the guy, I said, listen, you can't have a just God and a loving God, or you got to have both. You can't have love without justice. That's a worldview. You got to understand that logically that's correct, but it's also a worldview. I believe in a just God. I believe in a loving God, and somehow I've got to make those two meet. And you say, well, I don't understand how God can do this and how God can do that. It just doesn't make sense in my head. Well, basically, if you're basing it on the God of this book right here, he's the only God there is. And he can be however he wants to be. And now you have to make adjustments to fit within that framework, okay? And then now you got to sort all that out. There's a lot of mysteries there, but you got to sort that out. Karl Barth, who, not a huge fan of Karl Barth, but you look him up and read some of his teachings. But he made a statement a long time ago, generations ago. He said that a Christian should approach the world with a Bible in one hand and a newspaper in the other. He might say today that you might approach the world with a Bible in one hand and your cell phone in the other, your tablet or your computer, because we have more information coming our way today, more access to knowledge, more access to, just the details and the facts and the minutia and the footnotes that we can drag our brains through. We have more access to information now than we've ever had, but we're dumb. We're probably dumber than we've ever been. The idea that people are actually losing their jobs, losing their licenses to practice things, or being persecuted in the courts over saying that, hey, a little boy can't become a little girl. The level of ignorance that it takes, the illogical leap that you have to embrace to say we're going to normalize this type of rhetoric is asinine, beyond ignorant. So the kind of logic that we're saying, I saw a picture of this just this morning of two topless female protesters. And yes, I can define a woman. Two topless fat ass protesters with the dadgum things wrapped around their head, the turbans wrapped around, the kafaya, whatever you call those things. I mispronounce that stuff all the time because I don't care. But they got their face coverings on and their head coverings on with their boobs out. And they're talking about queers for Palestine. And I'm like, okay, stop it. Now you got your boobs out, but your head's covered, which tells me you don't even have a clue what the head covering is all about when it comes to Islam. You don't even know. You don't even know why you have your head covered. So from the neck up, you're dressed like a terrorist. From the neck down, you look like somebody that's never missed a meal at the Golden Corral buffet. And your floppy pancake titties are out. It's disgusting. It's gross. But people want to justify this kind of behavior and then try to come up with some kind of mental mind leap to say, okay, this is normal. This is real. Dear God in heaven, if you want to find out about other cultures, if you want to find out about other countries, if you want to find out about other religions, other worldviews, other ways of looking at things, if you want to look at historical perspectives, all you got to do is grab this little 6-inch supercomputer that's in your hand 20 out of 24 hours a day and just do some searches and some research and do some reading. But people are ignorant. They're dumb. They have no clue about the world that's around them. We just, in the last 8 months, have had 3 young girls, children, murdered in the Houston area by illegal aliens. Murdered. The big story that's out there right now is the Nungaray girl who was lured under the bridge by the 2 illegals. They tied her up, stripped her naked, raped her for 2 hours, and strangled her and threw her body in a ditch. They caught them, and now our taxpayer dollars are paying to keep them alive and feed them while they're on trial. That in and of itself is something that you can't make sense to me. I won't go too far on that for the sake of the censorship that we'll get if I tell you what I think needs to happen. But I think you can read between the lines. We just had 2 people that were shot by an illegal alien at Chick-fil-A in Irving, Texas, recently. We've had cops that were shot recently by illegal aliens. People are being murdered. People are being raped. There is lawlessness. And one of the guys who shot the cop said this is my culture. Okay, well, you came from Venezuela, where you murdered someone there, and now you came to America, and you've now murdered law enforcement officers here, and you say this is your culture. Typically, when people immigrate to a country, they come to embrace a new culture. They come to assimilate. That's not what's happening here. And we have a generation of people. What did I say to you a couple of weeks ago? I said every generation has to have a revelation of God. Everybody has to have every generation needs to have a revelation of knowledge and wisdom. Every generation needs to have a revelation of discipline. All of these things, these foundational things need to be built into every generation. We have a generation right now that has chosen ignorance, chosen to be stupid, exchanged knowledge and facts for feelings and emotions. And they think everybody's just supposed to go along and get along. My daughter has a heart the size of this table. All of my kids do. My kids have big, big hearts. And my daughter has recently been raising money for various families around the world that she's vetted, that she's discovered have needs. She sent me a message last week and she said, this is a Nigerian family. You might consider, helping me share this out. And she said, there's a Palestinian family. You probably can't share that. And I said, depending on the situation, I can absolutely share that. It just depends. I'm not anti-Palestinian families, folks. I'm anti-Hamas. And 70% of people in Palestine do support Hamas as their government. They have no choice really to do that, but to do that, and they do it. So I'm sitting there going, I'm happy to share it out, but I said, you just want to be careful. You want to vet these things because, again, we're not educating ourselves to the people and the culture that they know, and we're welcoming much of that because there's good people in those countries. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying. There's good people, there's good families, there's people who need to be helped. All of these kind of things. There's some sad stories out there, and if we can help them, I believe that when the light shines bright at home, it should also shine farthest away, just by the very nature of it. So I'm okay with that. But when we start embracing certain aspects of cultures that want to come in and eradicate us, we probably should wake up a little bit because I've been to these countries. I've seen their form of street justice. I've seen how they take care of business over there. And it ain't the way you and me are accustomed to doing things. So when the government cheese dries up and you've got 10 million illegals here and a large portion of them are interested in what they can get, I promise you what's going to happen on American streets is going to get way uglier than anything you have ever seen. Which brings me back to the point of what I want to talk to you today, the media. Now, the media is a liar. People who have a microphone, look right here in front of me, people who have a microphone and a platform to use it, and they can broadcast their ideologies out there, are potentially very dangerous people. Because everyone has a narrative, everyone has an agenda, everyone has an ideology. Many times, because we are selfish, sinful people, they're very selfish, sinful ideologies and agendas. They're trying to push something over on you, and that's where propaganda comes in. Now, back in 1980, there were about 50 to 60 different groups that owned the media conglomerates, okay? The media outlets, I should say. These days, I think there's 6. So there's 6 groups that own all the media. That's not a lot. That's not very diverse, okay? So they overlap quite a bit. So what you have is a very small group of people in the last 50 years, 40 to 50 years, who have now taken over the airwaves, taken over the mainstream media. They hate independent media. They hate the Daily Wires. They hate the Blaze. They hate, the people like Alex Jones and InfoWars. They hate Stu Peters. They hate me. They hate these individual voices. They hate the concept of people. They hate Joe Rogan, the idea that people are getting their information from us. They hate that. Why do they hate it so much? Because the mainstream media can't stand, just like people out there protesting on campuses, and progressive liberalism, they can't handle a free market of ideas. They can't handle that. They have to control the voices. So we're getting bombarded. You've heard me say this. I'm going to say it again because I don't mind repeating myself because it helps you remember this. I said 35 years ago, there's no way, when Ted Turner came out with CNN, I said, there's no way this is good for anyone. 24-hour news broadcasting, 7 days a week, they will run out of news stories and they'll start making them up. When they start making them up, we have a news media that's no better than the National Enquirer. It's if you follow on Instagram, for instance, let's say you follow Fox News. They have the biggest pile of crap that they put out there for clickbait, and all of them do it. All of them do it to entice you over to the article, because ultimately the article has advertisements on it, and the advertisements are how they get paid. So they have to give you the clickbaity crap. Now, clickbait is when you click on something and you go over there and it wasn't real at all. Like, it didn't tell you the story. At least when you click on their deals, it will give you the actual story. It's just a pain in the ass that you got to go over there and click their deal. But hey, that's how they make a living, okay? But I don't care about what some pop star is doing at the Cannes movie festival. I don't care what they're doing in the south of France. I don't care who was spotted walking through the mall. Like, that's not news to me. I don't care about that. Oh, here's a picture of Charlize Theron and her 37 transgender kids walking through the hills of Beverly Hills. I don't care. That's not news to me. That's not information. Now, in recent days, we saw the debate, if you want to call it that, between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. Two 80-year-old men arguing over their golf game is fantastic entertainment, as far as I'm concerned. But again, I have to be honest and say, while I'm supporting Trump in this situation, because I think there's some things that need to happen, and he's the guy that can make it happen, regardless of what you think about him, it is a sad state of affairs that we here in America are faced with two geriatric 80-year-old men who are wanting to run this country. But the media spin, and let me be clear, yes, I support Trump. He is the right guy. I believe he's the right guy. I've given you my reasons. I don't have to go back into that. So that being said, it's still a sad state of affairs. But the media spin surrounding the debate, unreal. I've never seen so many speculations on social media from influencers, from commentators, from politicos, from activists, everybody that's got a platform with their idea of what's going to happen next. Is Joe Biden going to be forced to step down? Will they continue to run him? Is Michelle going to step up? Is Gavin going to step up? Gretchen Whitmer? Is there even going to be a candidate? Will there be an election? Will there be another debate? Was CNN in on the hit job against Biden? Was this their way of setting him up so that he could at the end of the day fail, and it would make it look like it's the American people's opinion to get rid of him? What is the DNC up to? Barack Obama, he's got the purse strings, but Joe Biden's got the DNC. I've never seen so many things. There were people who said, I can't wait for this CNN hosted debate. Joe Biden's going to mop the floor with Donald Trump. And the exact same people a day after the debate were going, what the F did I just watch? I'll never watch anything on CNN ever again. Because they felt like CNN literally made him look like an emaciated old geriatric senile fool. And imagine you're living in a world where you're accusing CNN of helping Donald Trump. That's weird. That's where the logic has gone to. Then you got Nancy Pelosi on Face the Nation or whatever the stupid show is, saying that Donald Trump is the one who has dementia. This is 100% Saul Alinsky's rules for radicals. If you can't beat them at that, you take what's going on in your own camp and you throw it out and you accuse them of the same thing and you keep saying it until people believe it. The media is complicit in this level of lies, and so I want to talk to you a little bit about how you have a biblical worldview on what the media is doing. Now, let me just tell you, there's a couple of verses. I'm just going to throw them at you. Romans 12:2. Don't be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is the good and acceptable and the perfect. All right? So the media is going to lie to you. How are you going to test those lies? Well, sure, you can research, you can analyze, you can do your deep dives, you can, get online, you can check your resources, you can listen to the voices you trust. But you don't know what to trust until you learn to renew your mind. You can't understand the voices that are coming your way. Now listen, Satan himself is described as the prince of the power of the air. Well, you could say the airwaves. There's no doubt many of you have heard me say, all of my guests that come on here remotely, I say the devil lives in technology, and I'm always praying that something doesn't get lost in translation or a glitch happens. And Scheider can tell you, even when Bear was on here, and we were talking about that on the episode, TJ Morris, Bear was on here, and I said, there's going to be glitches in this thing, and that happened, didn't it? You guys had to work overtime to get those glitches out of there because the technology tried to screw it up. We were putting some strong truth out there. If you missed that episode, go back and get it. But you can't know what's right. You can't know what's true unless you learn to be transformed by the renewing of your mind, so that by testing, that's the analyzing it. I try to take things that people say to me and I say, okay, does that line up with what I believe? Does that line up with what I've been taught? Does that line up with the disciplines of my mind? Does that line up with what I've read, say, in my Bible? Or the people that I do trust? And then by testing it, I can discern what is the will of God, what's the good, acceptable, and the perfect. Jesus said in Matthew 24:4, he said, see that no one leads you astray. I've been convicted of that recently because I'll read something and I get a huff and a puff and it turns out it wasn't real in the first place. So that's a little bit something that's convicting for me, is when I go, you know what, I'm being led astray here. And quite honestly, it ought to piss you off. The fact that there are people, the Harry Sissons of the world, and yes, we've got them on the right, but the Chris Mowrys and the Harry Sissons on liberal progressive Twitter who want to get out there and gaslight people. Harry Sisson was on Piers Morgan just the other night. Piers Morgan literally handed him his ass, and then he walked away from that saying, at the end of the night, Piers was agreeing with my assessment. No, he literally walked all over you. He walked out to your barn and called your mule out and turned it loose in the field, son. I'm telling you, he owns your little ass. But yet you're going to come back and tell everybody at the end of the night in your little interview that Piers Morgan agreed with you. See, don't be led astray. But people read this stuff on face value. Now, I know that you're of a different metal. I know that you are built out of a different cloth, and you don't do those things. But I get convicted of that sometimes. Proverbs 17:4 says, an evildoer listens to wicked lips, and a liar gives ear to a mischievous tongue. I'd say that pretty much sums up where we're living with the media these days. Wicked lips and a mischievous tongue. And we're sitting there listening to it. It makes us evil. Quite literally says, when we listen to that, it makes us an evildoer. We become an evildoer because we go out and we behave based on the lie. And if you're behaving on something that's not built on the truth, it's going to lead you down the wrong path. And it can be slight. Trust me, if I start walking point A to point B and somebody gives me a nudge and I get off by 1 or 2%, I will not end up at point B if I keep walking at that angle. Psalm, it's a long one. I'm gonna read it to you. Psalm 83, he says, they lay crafty plans against your people. They consult together against your treasured ones. They say, come, let us wipe them out as a nation. Let the name of Israel be remembered no more. For they conspire with one accord against you. Against you, they make a covenant. That sounds like something that's happening right now with these protesters, right? We're going to come wipe you out from the river to the sea. And I've had people argue back and say, that's not the intention at all. You guys need to go and you need to listen you need to read the book, and you need to go back and find the Dr. Phil. I posted some of it. The Dr. Phil interview with Yosef Massab, who is the son of the founder of Hamas, and what he has to say about Hamas and how these protesters are lying to themselves. This idea that it's all about this solidarity and this compassion movement. He said, he said, you're ignorant. In summary, what he said, and this is a side note, he said the Palestinian people are basically, he said, I don't separate them from Hamas because at the end of the day, if you take Israel out of the equation, this is not about Palestinians, because the Palestinian people don't see themselves as Palestinians. They see themselves as tribalists. And if you take the stability and the security that Israel in that part of the region has supplied, whether you agree with Israel or not, what they have supplied in terms of stability, all those tribes would be fighting against each other, because once they wipe out Israel, guess what? They're going to keep wiping out each other's competing tribe, and it's going to be a mass genocidal mess. That's the point that Mossad was trying to make. So again, when you hear this kind of stuff, they lay these crafty plans against your people. And trust me, when they get the Saturday people, they're going to come for the Sunday people. They've already stated that as well. So again, they want to wipe it all out. And the news media sweeps all that away. They sweep all that away in the name of political correctness, and you and I are left to our own devices to try to figure out what the truth is. 1 Samuel 2:3 says, "Talk no more so very proudly. Let not arrogance come from your mouth. For the Lord is a God of knowledge, and by him actions are weighed." How many times how many clips of The View have I shared on my social media over the years of these people who are doing exactly that? Letting the arrogance proudly come from their mouth without any knowledge. God, this says, for the Lord is a God of knowledge. I have people, just as an example, Bear and I talked about it. It was funny. We were talking about how people say, you ought to be over on Rumble. The fact that people can't take the step of typing my name in the search block part of the Rumble homepage and finding me is astounding. I had someone who came to me at a show this week. "We love your truck videos, man. They were great. I love when you get in there with that dog in the back seat and do your little thing." And I was like, "Well, I still do them." "Yeah, but we don't see them anymore." "Okay, well, have you searched for them? Have you typed my name?" I mean, you're on Facebook. Obviously, everybody that's taking a dump is sitting there on Facebook or Instagram or whatever. If you thought, you know what? I just spent money to go see Chad Prather live. I enjoyed it. What if I typed his name in the search engine and see what pops up? Maybe he did something on here this week and they're not letting me see it. And the guy followed up with, I was gracious to the guy and his wife. I was gracious. I didn't say all that to him, but I'm saying it to everybody listening. The guy said to me, and this was very telling, he said, "We don't really do the podcast thing. That's a little long for us." And I said, "Yes, it is an investment. It is an investment of your time and your mind, and it's a conversation that I like to have with people that I can kind of therapeutically get stuff off my own chest." I told him, I said, "Yeah, it's kind of an investment." But I will say to people that if you are, whether it's me or whoever it is, you don't have to be in the podcast at all. I see people all the time say, "Well, I just don't read books. I don't really read books." Well, I'm at a loss here because this thing that I just read, where he says, "The Lord is a God of knowledge, and by him actions are weighed." Okay, so God has all this knowledge. He values knowledge, and he's going to weigh the actions of his people based on that knowledge. How are we supposed to weigh out what's going on around us if we don't have knowledge? See, thinking is hard work. Critical thinking is really hard work. And we miss the boat. I miss the boat all the time because I'm impetuous and spontaneous sometimes, and I pop off with an opinion before I think about it, and I'm like, yep, okay, put my foot in my mouth. I've said for years I've got a foot-shaped mouth. I know what my foot tastes like. I've put it in there many, many times, probably have already today, and we'll go back and watch this and go, damn. But that's okay. That's okay. At least we're trying, right? Thinking is not comfortable. It is a hard thing to do. But how am I supposed to judge the actions going on around me if I don't value knowledge? If I'm not getting into a book or a research or something, and you're like, well, man, I like to go out to the lake on Saturdays and have a good time, pop up in some silver bullets and let's go. I trust me, I know we have entertained ourselves to death. I went to see the Horizon movie last night, the Kevin Costner movie. I don't go to the movie theater, but I wanted to see this on a big screen. I know it was going to be beautifully shot, and it was. So that was 3 hours of my life that I spent to know that there's going to be a chapter 2 and a chapter 3 and a chapter 4. And I guess, Kevin Costner spent $100 million to keep me in a theater from now until eternity. Okay, but it won't happen because I saw the one, and I'll wait for the other one to come out in my house. But we go out there and we're willing to invest 3 hours of our life to make Kevin Costner wealthier than he already is, about a Western that we can pretty much predict what the story is going to be. And then we're going to go out there for the next few chapters and do it all over again. But yet I can't sit down and read a chapter a day of a book that's going to expand my mind. I mean, just a chapter. I'm not asking you to read the whole book. It's amazing to me when I sit down and read on my phone. I can read on my phone a book sitting there in the evening, and this little tiny 6-inch screen. Look at Biscuit. Isn't she cute? Y'all see her there? Yeah, look over there. Where'd she go? Put her up on camera 1. Look at that dog right there. Golly, that's a pretty dog, man. Look at that thing. The little sad eyes. Look, little eyeballs look like little oil drops. Oh, my gosh. I miss that baby. All right. But I can read that thing, and after I've scanned 2 pages with big words, because I can't see, there's a little notification that pops up at the top. After just 2 little pages, maybe after reading like 700 words, it says, your reading goal for the day has been accomplished. What? I'm now reduced to an Apple iPhone telling me what my reading goal is, and that I've supposedly accomplished that goal after 700 words, if that many. We've really dumbed ourselves down, and I'm convicted by it. Like, I really am convicted about it. You have men and women out there with nefarious plots in the mainstream media. You got writers, you got producers, you got researchers. I've been in this world a long time. I know these people. You got people out there coming up with stories, people who are in the dark web, the deep web. They're scouring the internet, reading documents, reading bills, reading legislation, reading things that you and I are never going to get into. And then they give it to a talking head, and that talking head comes on a screen and tells you what the truth is, quote unquote, and tells you what information you need to be processing. And we just go, oh, okay, that's fine. I'll just take that. You know why? Because our reading level is like a 7th grader. We can't comprehend anything because we haven't tried to. The Lord is a God of knowledge, and by him actions are weighed. Jude 1:16. These are grumblers, malcontents, following their own sinful desires. They are loud-mouthed boasters, showing favoritism to gain advantage. Bam! Punch me right in my face. You get on my social media. That's what I do. I show favoritism to gain advantage. I want you to come over to my way of thinking. Loud-mouthed boasters. Woo! Boy, howdy. Look at me just reading it right to myself. Hey, if I can do it to myself, you can do it to yourself. But you can also understand that there are those out there who are doing it with a nefarious plot planned. They want to deceive you. Me personally, I'm not trying to deceive you. I want us to get on the same page and think about these things. For the mind, Romans 8:7, for the mind that is set on the flesh is hostile to God, for it does not submit to God's law. Indeed, it cannot. I don't want to get into the rest of these because it's so deep and we've gone far enough. What do I do about it? Well, let's take a look. Let's take a look. Proverbs. I'm going to actually open the book here. Proverbs chapter 26. This is how I think you deal with the mainstream media. Okay, I think this is how you do it. Let me take a little sip of my go-go juice here. Hang on. Look at that beautiful Chad Prather Show cup. You can get it at prathertees.com. Guaranteed to show up not cracked or chipped. If it does, we will replace it. I'm talking to you. All right. Proverbs 26. Let's just read some of it. Like snow in the summer, like rain in the harvest, so honor is not fitting for a fool. Now again, let's keep in mind who we're talking about. We're talking about the voices that are around us, the things that bombard us, okay? There's a lot of foolishness out there. Like a sparrow in its flitting, like a swallow in its flying. So a curse without cause does not alight. A whip for the horse, a bridle for the donkey, and a rod for the back of fools. What's he talking about? He's saying that if we're just flitting around, bouncing around, oh, let me scroll some reels on TikTok. Let me get my information off of Twitter. Let me jump over here on Facebook and see what Chad's saying. Let me get in the comment section and bounce around here. Let me do all these things. Let me go to CNN. Let me go to Fox News. Let's see. I know some of you are sitting out there in Newsmax or Fox News or any of them. And listen, I'm not criticizing any of them. I listen to all of them from time to time. But some of you got it on 24/7. My father, before he passed away, God bless him, my father kept it on Fox News. It was on 24/7. He slept with it going into his head at night. You could hear him. You go to visit my father. You go to visit there at my parents' house, man. You could hear that thing down the hall. You could hear his TV. And I mean, it's everybody. Voices just going into his head while he slept. Never had Fox News off. Some of you are that way. You're that sparrow that's flitting. You're that swallow that's flying. He says, listen, in verse 3, when he says, a whip for the horse, bridle for the donkey, rod for the back of fools, he's saying there needs to be some discipline here. There needs to be some discipline. He says in verse 4, and I want to spend a minute on this. He says, do not answer a fool according to his folly, or you will also be like him. He says, and there's a play on words. This version right here, this is the New American Standard Bible, does a good job of interpreting this. There was a play on words with the word folly in the Hebrew language between verse 4 and verse 5, because if you read it in, say, like the King James, it looks like a contradiction. He says, do not answer a fool according to his folly, or you will also be like him. The other version says, answer a fool in his folly, so that he won't be wise in his own eyes. This actually adds a word in a little bit, adds a meaning to it in verse 5. And it's not inaccurate, where he says, answer a fool as his folly deserves, that he not be wise in his own eyes. So I like that, because that's what it means. It says, do not answer a fool according to his folly, or you'll also be like him. How many times do you jump on the internet, get on social media, and get in an argument with somebody? I'm guilty of this. Get in an argument with somebody down in the comment section, and you dig right down in the trenches with them. I see people all the time. You say, Chad, this is beneath you. Okay. Again, y'all have no idea how low I can go. If you understood the restraint of my sophomoric humor, that if you knew how much I'm bridling the donkey here, this ass can talk. Trust me. So I have a way with words. I think you'll know that at this point. So I have to control myself quite a bit, because I'll lay something on somebody that I will immediately feel the pang of Holy Spirit conviction in my soul. And for those of you who don't think that happens, trust me, it does happen in my heart. But it says, don't answer a fool according to his folly, because you're just going to be a fool too. You're going to be just like him. He says, answer a fool as his folly deserves. In other words, know why he's not saying just let it go. He's not saying that whenever you hear something that's wrong, whether it's on the news, in the media, for instance, like when the Atlantic article came out year before last, where the girl was asking for COVID amnesty, because basically she said, all you people out there that didn't want to go according to the protocols, we mistreated you. We were wrong. We didn't know what we were dealing with, and now we're asking you to grant us forgiveness and amnesty for the way we behaved. And of course, I said, absolutely. We even made a t-shirt. I think you can still get some, prathertees.com, that says no amnesty. No forgetting, no forgiveness. I'll forgive you as a human being for being a human being, but no, I'm not going to forgive your behavior, because again, you'll do it again. That's why. I'm not going to forget and forgive, because you will do it again. You've shown your colors. So when a person comes out like that, that's a foolish thing to write in that Atlantic article and say, hey, we messed up. We were wrong. We didn't know what we were dealing with. We poured our ignorance into your brain. So just let it go, okay? No, I'm not going to let it go. That deserves a response. So I'm now going to answer the fool according to his folly as it deserves. Because otherwise, old girl that wrote that article in the Atlantic, she'll think, look at me, pat myself on the back. I got published in the Atlantic. I must have something to say. And the next time around, she'll publish more crap out there, deeming herself to be wise and smart. She's not. That was a dumb article. It was a dumb article. People are putting this stuff out there all the time. And you know what? They need to be called on it. I have people who will call me on stuff. I've got people who have said, hey, the Apostle Paul, The apostles, you read the New Testament, where there were people who were new believers, new Christians, and it says, we came and showed them a better way. In other words, they were kind of mixing the law in with grace and all that. They didn't understand this concept of a new life in Christ. And he said, so we came and we helped them a lot. We kind of set them free with the truth. There's people out there that need to be set free with the truth. But you can't dig down into the folly. And again, hey, I'm raising my hand. I've been there. I've done that. And I'll do it again. I'm not above it. But this is convicting when I read this. See, folks, I want you to understand, this is what I'm doing. In these days, in these recent months, I've been pouring back through the scripture. I guess I'm doing what Karl Barth said. Read the Bible in one hand and the newspaper in the other and say, okay, these things, they're incongruous. How can I take my worldview and affect what this other worldview is that's nefarious? And I'm reading this stuff and I'm like, you know what? All I know to do, and I think this is what God told me to do, if you want me to sound like a nut job, God told me to tell you. And so I'm doing it, all right? And I'm using this platform to do it. And I think it's more profitable than the headlines. So he says in verse 6, the fool who's in his folly, he says he cuts off his own feet and drinks violence. He sends a message by the hand of a fool. So how many of you turn on the news and there is an explosion or there's a shooting or there's a robbery or there's a rape and murder or there's a smash and grab or there's a bodega owner who shot and killed somebody trying to rob him or there's somebody wrestling a gun out of somebody's hand or somebody getting stabbed and they're bleeding out on the street or there's violence. There's violence everywhere because violence sells. And it says, he cuts off his own feet and drinks violence and sends a message by the hand of a fool. So what do you have? You have all of these newscasters out there on the media who are reading a teleprompter. They've not thought critically about the things that they're reporting. They're reading the teleprompter that someone else has written, whether a producer or someone in corporate sent it down, and now you got 100 different news stations reading the same copy. And it's literally fulfilling this. He sends a message by the hand of a fool. A programming director, a producer has decided, hey, violence sells, sex sells, all these things. Let's give it to the dumbass to read it off the teleprompter. And we sit there mindless in front of the screen just watching this crap. Like the legs which are useless to the lame, so is a proverb in the mouth of fools. Like one who binds a stone in a sling, so is he who gives honor to a fool. Like a thorn which falls into the hand of a drunkard, so is a proverb in the mouth of fools. Like an archer who wounds everyone, so is he who hires a fool or who hires those who pass by. Like a dog that returns to its vomit is a fool who repeats his folly. Apply that to the stuff we're allowing into our minds and calling it media. Apply that. We just keep returning to the vomit. I could sit on that one for a little while, but I'm not going to. Verse 12 of Proverbs 26, he says, do you see a man wise in his own eyes? There is more hope for a fool than for him. The sluggard says, there's a lion in the road. There's a lion in the open square. As the door turns on its hinges, so does the sluggard on his bed. This is talking about you and me, folks. We've gotten lazy. We'll sit there and tell you, you know what? Armageddon is coming. There's a lion in the street. We're at the precipice of World War III. We're not going to make it. It's the end times. There's warships from Russia and a nuclear submarine 25 miles off the coast of Florida. What are we going to do? There's a lion in the street. What do you want to do about it? Let's roll over and spend more time on Facebook. As the door turns on its hinges, so does the sluggard in his bed. The sluggard buries his hand in the dish just to grab more out, but it says he's weary of bringing it to his mouth again. We've gotten so lazy that we're reaching in and grabbing this information and we don't even consume it anymore because, what's the point? There'll be more stories tomorrow. I hope this is making sense to you with what I'm saying because it's awfully, awfully convincing for me. The sluggard is wiser in his own eyes than 7 men who can give a discreet answer. Like one who takes a dog by the ears is he who passes by and meddles with strife not belonging to him. Man, The application and the implication of all of that is amazing. It's astounding, really. This idea that, I posted a social media clip the other day talking about people who want to meddle in your business in the comment section of social media when they know nothing about you. And why do we pay attention to these people? Because, again, this is the person who meddles. This is a fool that meddles with strife not belonging to them. Like a madman who throws firebrands, arrows, and death, so is the man who deceives his neighbor and says, I was not joking. For lack of wood, the fire goes out, and where there is no whisper, contention quiets down. In other words, stop feeding it. Stop playing into it. Like charcoal to hot embers and wood to fire, so is a contentious man to kindle strife. The words of a whisperer are like dainty morsels, and they go down in the innermost parts of the body. Like the earthen vessel overlaid with silver dross are burning lips and a wicked heart. You can dress it up, flower it up, make it look all pretty, but at the end of the day, it's a bunch of garbage, man. He who hates disguises it with his lips, but he lays up deceit in his heart. When he speaks graciously, do not believe him, for there are 7 abominations in his heart. Though his hatred covers itself with guile, his wickedness will be revealed before the assembly. He who digs a pit will fall into it, and he who rolls a stone, it will come back on him. A lying tongue hates those it crushes, and a flattering mouth works ruins. They're setting up a trap for themselves. The key is don't fall into it with them. And that's what we're doing. By allowing the mainstream media to tell you, what happened just last week prior to the debate was the director of media, the press secretary for the White House, for the Biden administration, Karine Jean-Pierre. She and all of her others were saying these videos of Joe Biden falling down or stuttering or shuffling or looking like a feeble old man, and he is, they're all deep fakes and they're cheap fakes. They're digging a pit for themselves. They did that. Perfect example. They dug the pit. They said, no, this is not real. That's not what's really happening. These were all deep fakes and cheap fakes. And then the debate happened and they all fell in the pit. They all fell in their own hole because the world saw exactly what a senile, dementia-ridden octogenarian looks like when you put him on a big stage with somebody who has sharper acumen to, and listen, kudos to Donald Trump. He could have really embarrassed Joe Biden. I think he had grace on the man. He could have really, really decimated him. And I saw times when he pulled back, but they fell in their own pit. They fell into their own pit. An email just went out just a few days ago from the Biden administration to their supporters, and the email was giving them ways to defend against Joe Biden's behavior in the debate. So they're doubling down on that. They've already fallen in the pit, and now they're going to fight as a dog returns to his vomit. As a dog returns to his vomit, instead of going, you know what? Let's just be honest here. Let's just be honest. Now, look, there's plenty of things we can apply to the Republican Party. I'm not excusing anybody in this stuff. There were things that Donald Trump said in the debate that simply weren't true. I'm not talking about that at this point. I'm not talking about this point. Most of what he said was true, but you know why? I got on Twitter and a lot of people had this. The Hodge twins, for instance, was talking about this, and somebody listed this big, long thing. They said in their tweet, they said, people keep saying Donald Trump told all these lies. What are the lies? Give us a list. Somebody give this big, long list. And everybody underneath that list said, yeah, all of those are true. Maybe one or two, depending on the sarcasm or the hyperbole, sort of like when Donald Trump, according to the voices out there, said that Donald Trump said, you're supposed to inject bleach into your arm to get rid of COVID. He was making a freaking joke in the context. When they said that, he said there were very fine people on both sides, and he called white supremacists in Charlottesville, Virginia, find people. He didn't. That's been debunked over and over again. When he supposedly mocked a handicapped person at a rally, you've seen all of the hand things that they keep showing, the little frozen deals, and made a meme out of it. All this stuff, folks, has been debunked over and over again. But the fact that the media, talking heads, the fool who's regurgitating the words, has told them enough times, they'll keep returning to that vomit. And they're become a sluggard. They're too lazy to do anything about it, to think critically. And they've fallen like fools into their folly. And they say, oh, no, there are all these lies out there, all these lies out there. No. You've been told they were lies. You have not done the investigative research to determine whether or not they are. And that's worthless, in my opinion. So Proverbs 26, I want you to take your time, mull through it a little bit, meditate on those verses, and say, how does this apply to the world around us? How does this apply to what we're seeing happen when it comes to the media or social media or the mainstream media or even independent media? What are the journalists trying to pull over on us? Because I've told you many, many times, I said it on Fox News. They weren't real big fans of me saying it one morning on Fox and Friends, where I said, all of you, including Fox News, have lost journalistic objectivity. That is a term which simply means if at the end of the story I know the opinion and the position of the author, it's not journalism. It was an opinion piece. If I know the leaning of the person who created it, then it wasn't journalism. And all of these so-called news sites have done that. That's one of the reasons I like getting my news from townhall.com. I literally subscribe to townhall.com. I feel like, they have Red State and Town Hall articles and things like that, which have opinion pieces. But every half hour, in the mornings, I like to listen to townhall.com and see what they say, because I believe they just deliver the news. I have no affiliation with them. I don't know anybody over there, but I just, people ask me sometimes, where do I get my news? That's where. The other place I get my news is right here. I read this thing every day, and I made it a point for my entire life, going back specifically to the age of about 16 years old. I'm 51 now, of reading this book and devouring it and chewing on it and meditating on it. I don't always like what I get out of it. I don't like the implications that it has for my life sometimes. But still, I believe that if you want to serve a God of knowledge who is going to judge all things and all actions based on that knowledge, you might want to become someone created in his image that also has knowledge as well. Maybe it'll translate into some wisdom along the way. Well, there you go. We were all over the place, but I think there's some application that can be made. The media's out there. They want to deceive you. You got to come back with critical thinking and truth. Don't be the sluggard that turns over on his bed and says, okay. There's a lion in the square. Well, somebody else will deal with it. There's a lion in the street. Somebody else will take care of that. I want you to be better than that. Where did we start? Romans 12:2. Don't be conformed to this world. Now, a lot of times people hear that, and they think that that's all about behavior. And, well, you can't go out there and look like the world and do all these kind of things and still call yourself a Christian, blah, 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 blah. There is an element to that, but that's not the only thing that verse is talking about. A lot of that is talking about your mind. Because if you look at Romans 12, let me just give you a little freebie here. If you go over to Romans 12 and you look at the context of that right there, if you go to Romans chapter 12, when he says in verse 1, I urge you, brethren, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your spiritual service of worship. Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of what? Your body? That's not what he said. There's a place for that. That's not what he's talking about. He said renewing of your mind. Renewing of your mind, so that you may prove what the will of God is, that which is good and acceptable. For through the grace given to me, I say to everyone among you, not to think more highly of himself than he ought to think, but to think so as to have, again, that word think, but to think so as to have sound judgment, as God has allotted to each a measure of faith. You have a place in this world. You have a platform in this world. You don't need to think of yourself more highly than anybody else. That's what he's saying. Because we're all in this thing together. And if you read Romans 12, that's the context. I have what he's allotted to me. You have what he's allotted to you. We have to renew our minds so that we get really good about that place he's put us, because through the grace, the power of God to do what he's given you to do, through that grace, I'm given a task to do. He says in verse 4, he says, just as we have many members in one body and all the members do not have the same function, so we who are many are one body in Christ and individually members one of another. What he's saying is this: I've put together this church, if you will, this army, this fellowship, this, think about the Lord of the Rings, Tolkien's Lord of the Rings. You had the elf, you had the dwarf, you had the man, you had the hobbit. You had this group of people, right? And they all brought something. You had the wizard. All of this little army of misfits came together. They were all from different backgrounds, different places. Every single one of them had a different thing to bring to this mission that they had. And they played their roles. And as they played their roles, they together accomplished the destruction of the ring. Okay? So I want you to think of yourself that way. If God's allotted me the grace to be the dwarf, I'm not going to go out and try to be the elf. If I'm out there slinging the hammer and the axe, I'm not the guy on the horseback, whipping out, 30,000 arrows in 60 seconds time. I'm not the one that lived for, 12,000 years or whatever. It's weird. But anyway, you get the point of what I'm trying to say. You all have been given a different measure of grace to exercise accordingly. And I want you to do that. But you can't do it if you don't renew your mind. If you're filling it up with garbage, pablum, podcasts, and that's the only thing you're getting, you're not renewing your mind. So I'm going to leave you with that. That's enough truth to deal with. I know people say, Chad, you're preaching. Okay, I'm preaching. Deal with it. That's what I'm here to do. That's where I'm at, and it's what I'm going to talk about. We got some great conversations coming down the pike. Matt Kim is coming in. I'm trying to get my buddy Matt Marsden, who's been in everything from Transformers to Black Hawk Down. If you've watched the show long enough, you know him. He's a good buddy of mine. We've got Dave Rubin, who's coming, and we're trying to confirm all of that. Tons of voices, people that you've met before, but I'm bringing them back. Chad Robichaud. My buddy Robo is coming in. He's going to sit right here in the cave with me in a couple of weeks. I'm looking forward to that conversation because so much has happened in his life, and he's got the new book coming out August 13th that I'm excited about, that talks about what he and his son Hunter did by going to Ukraine on those various missions. Tons and tons and tons of stuff, lots and lots and lots of people, and I'm excited about all of it. So hang in there with me, folks. We're having a good time, and God's doing something in me. God's doing something in you. And what was it that Matt said to me in the text message? He said, there's parallel lines that are about to converge. And I can tell you this, I see the horizon, and I don't know, maybe they're about to drop a big nuclear bomb on all of us and it's all going to be exciting. That's a whole other level of excitement. But I see an optimistic future. Somewhere out there, I see a silver lining, because I know there's people out there who are renewing their minds and they're thinking clearly. And if we can learn together, we can live together. And I think it's going to be an exciting time to come. Trust me, all the evil that's out there, and trust me, as we came through Pride Month, a lot of that stuff was out there. Listen, I was trying to leave you, but I can't yet. So for those 10 of you that are still listening, look at what just happened. My buddy Robbie Starbuck exposed Tractor Supply. Tractor Supply got a new CEO. They implemented a bunch of DEI stuff, a bunch of LGBTQ whatever initiatives, all of these hiring practices, which were crazy, training policies, just garbage crap that was just trying to pander to the woke left. My buddy Robbie Starbuck, he exposed all of that stuff, and we all shared it together, exposed it. Their stocks went just like that. But they didn't double down, Tractor Supply. They didn't pull a Bud Light. They actually came out, repented, recanted, said we were wrong. We did the wrong thing by our customer base. I would still like to see them go a little bit further and eliminate those people who were thinking that was a good idea. At the time of this recording, they haven't done that yet. But at least they came out and said, we were wrong and we're going to do better. Folks, there's a way to do this. There's a way to get results and bring this country back in line with the values that made it great. Made it great. And I want you to remember, our founding fathers weren't a bunch of perfect men either. They had their sins, they had their scars, they had their flaws. Failures in many cases. But when they all came together, they brought their measure of faith, they brought their measure of grace, they brought their measure of a renewed mind to whatever degree that was. They brought their measure of scholarly accomplishment and intelligence and all of those things, and it worked together and it made something really, really good. Well, if we do that, we can do that again. And we can hold certain things accountable. These major voices, these demonic voices that are trying to tear us down and destroy our country, we can change all that. We can change all of that. So hang tight, folks. It's getting good. Trust me, it's getting good. Share these episodes so I can preach to all your family and friends too. And make sure you leave the rating and review. Join the community at thechadprathershow.com. The community, thechadprathershow.com. I love you guys. I do. I can't say it enough. I try to say it every single episode because I want you to know that no matter what, you are loved. I know some of you are struggling through some things. I get the messages. I see them. I read them. I'm super crazy busy. I'm bombarded with a lot of different things. So if I'm sending you the heart emoji back or whatever, don't take that as me slighting you. I promise you, I really do. My heart is with you. And normally when I read those messages, I immediately say a prayer for you. That's been my habit for a long, long time. Is I just say, you know what, God, you know the situation better than I do, and you're a good father to them, just like you are to me. And I ask you to be merciful and grant them grace through all of this stuff, because mercy and grace is where it is at. Trust me. Okay, I'm out of here till next time. Thanks for tuning in, and I love you. God bless you. Talk to you then. Bye.